Hello, I'm John Coleman from ApocatastasisInstitute for the Humanities, an alternative college and high school here on New Milford, Connecticut, USA. Today, I'm being joined in this latest conversation with, once again, David James Rodriguez. And we're continuing our conversation looking at education today, moving into some of the ramifications of education in the social sphere and the so-called legal sphere. Before we get caught up with David and kind of get our footing for this episode, just one announcement concerning Apocatastasis, and that is an invitation to check out our recent course catalog for the autumn, which I've produced since our last episode and our last interview. And so that will have all of the staff's different courses, as well as a mention of our integrated humanities curricula called The Project, which is a very comprehensive program which you will not find anywhere else. So you can download that freely, our course catalog for autumn 2025 from our website, which is dutifully ticking down below on the screen here, as well as in the description. Before I welcome David properly here, we have the link tree. Where is the link tree? There we go. And don't forget to check out David's sites in this, and I'll be toggling as best I can between this link tree and our proper title, which is STRAWMANed, the State as Father. David, welcome. How have you been since our last chat about a month and a half ago?
Yes, all is well, John. Just being reminded how precious life is and how beautiful it is to be alive right now with you and present moment consciousness. So, yeah, it's beautiful. And of course, summer means people deciding what they're going to do with their children. And hopefully the teenagers and children are deciding what they're going to do in the fall. And my hope is that they will get out and do maybe some of the education with you or myself or anybody else out there instead of under a compulsory environment. But yeah, it's a beautiful time out here in Northern California and just enjoying the weather before, well, at least up in the hills and the mountains before the snow comes. So it's beautiful to be with you again, man.
Excellent. Same to you, David. It's great to be here. And just for the audience, by way of background baseball, if there's a slight delay, it's just because I've muted the mic on my end just for reverb and audio reasons. So just take note of that. So, David, here we are. We've looked at our past couple episodes at homeschooling. We've got to know yourself some, and looked at that self-direction in education, also that moral aspect, that self-direction and that morality aspect, which I think is so necessary to properly direct and govern one's individual liberty and agency. Often missing in the discussion of self-direction and agency, liberty, homeschooling, and so forth. So very refreshing that you bring that aspect up. But here we are, every school, as I never tire of saying, every school, every educational modality, use whatever hyphens you want, wild schooling, road schooling, public schooling, homeschooling, unschooling, whatever you want. There's so many of these things now. Whatever you want, the human being is a social creature. There's the old saying that the hermit is either a saint or a madman. And so the education of mankind inherently, it does not matter what hyphens we have, the education that we have inherently has something to do with the society that we will go on to fill, and that created the educational model to begin with. So here we are with our title here, STRAWMANed, the State as Father. And I have some step-offs here. Was there a particular angle you wanted to hit this at to begin with, or should I just bring up whatever might strike me here?
Yeah, whatever is relevant in your mind. Just for the audience, this is such a large topic, and I think we're going to scratch the surface, but hopefully, and I may be able to share my screen a little bit because I'm working with some legal stuff now, and I'll talk more about some of the experiences that I've had. But yeah, step off anywhere that you like. I just want the audience to know that there is a lot of foundational case law and research behind these things, and that you're going to be invited to go do your own research and verify some of these things we talk about. But there is definitely, as they say, something is rotting in Denmark. And my friend says, nope, it's closer than that. Try your local government, county, state, and federal. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, but take any angle you like, and we'll just kind of dovetail as we can.
Sure thing, David. And just by way of back of the house stuff, by in terms of putting screen share on, do you see the bar in the middle there?
Yes.
The of that middle bar, in the middle, there is an icon which it looks like a rectangle with a little cross in it, a little plus sign.
Mm-hmm.
You ought to be able to queue up whatever you want by clicking on that and choosing the tab that you want. And then when you want, you can choose that and click accept or whatever. And then when you want that on the screen, I can just click that.
Perfect.
All right. And if you can chew and how did they say, chew bubble gum and walk at the same time here as you get that all set up. I think the first place you might want to start, and again, this is a vast subject, and I have certain topics I want to bring up with in this here, and then some recent things besides. And one of the things that cows me and that daunts me is the vastness of this topic. There's a project I need to address soon enough with the school, and I've kicked it down the road for about 5 or 6 years, and recently things have come to force my hand. And the thing that's postponed it is the enormity of this, and the fact that this, I believe, monster is staring us in the face. And well, I don't want to overdraw the picture. We can get to how big this is, but the first thing I want to lead with here, David, is what do we mean by a straw man or the straw man, and in those strange capital letters?
Yes, my understanding of the straw man is a corporate entity. Whereas you and I, we write our names, capital D, lowercase a, V, I, D. That's me, a man. And in the corporate world, if you ever started a corporation, you'll notice that the corporation is all in upper class or uppercase numbers. So this is a distinction that you look at your driver's license and many permits and these things. And if you don't have the awareness, you would never notice that. It just looks like your name. But then once you start learning about the commercial aspect of names and how everything has a purpose, you'll see that. So the straw man is this corporate entity that you were unaware of. And I can give you the quote by Colonel Edward Mandell House, who said this in the early 1900s. And he was a very prolific politician and almost a fixer in the government. He said, quote, "Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer being unable to work and earn a living. Chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading, birth certificate, to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation, secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure out plans. And if by accident 1 or 2 men should figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund a government, by floating liens and debt to the registrants in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap us huge profits beyond our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption, and we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. So they have been planning this, and they laid it out, and I think that was in the maybe 1920s or 19 teens when that quote was named, and that was before Social Security came out. So this idea of the straw man is ancient, and now it's being exposed. So this is the positive side, because I got to find the solutions and some hope for humanity, is that now we're starting to understand this is not some theory. This is actually in the law books, and I can pull up the document here shortly, but that's my quick kind of overview to let the people know, wow, this has been in the works for a while. There is merit to it, and now it's up to each one of us to learn about it, share with each other, and then become free from it.
Great. Thank you for that, David. And Mandel House, I was thinking of certain parallels. Let's see. Mandel House would be the Barack Obama to let's see. Mandel House is to Woodrow Wilson what Barack Obama was to Joe Biden. Let's put it that way. You mentioned him as a fixer. So Mandel House, if people aren't familiar, that's a great term actually, was the fixer of Woodrow Wilson. After Wilson went to the Treaty of Paris in 1919 and had a stroke and basically became retarded, Mandel House was the one who was basically, with a little bit of exaggeration, kind of holding the corpse's hand and having Woodrow Wilson sign all those documents. So that man's legacy is actually quite far-reaching. For some of you who know the legacy of the Treaty of Paris in post-World War I. So anyway, quite a sinister character, if I could venture an adjective there. And one of which, that quote, which very much casts a light really on I believe, the logical conclusion of the liberal capital L nation state, meaning you have these 18th century systems. And once you strip that away of all the rhetoric of freedom, or you try to define what those guys back then across the world, all these capital L liberals meant by, free governments and free trade and all this jazz about freedom. Once you strip that down to the bone, what you're left with is the fact that you are going to have lands, countries, run as basically chambers of commerce. I mean, what is the town that we're sitting in, that David's sitting, that you're sitting in? How is that run any differently than the Chamber of Commerce? It's not. And that's because what happens in the 18th century is that the business owners take over. Okay, they take over and they dress themselves up with all sorts of flattering titles and rhetoric and everything. However, fast forward 100 years, just 100, maybe 150 years. And what are you seeing by the time you get to Mandel House? Definitely FDR here in these United States. You're seeing that the time for rhetoric is over, right? The time to tickle everyone with being free and you can be what you want and every man's king, that time's over. And actually in America, that was long over by the Civil War. The Civil War is basically the sobering up to the clash between rhetoric and reality. But definitely 50 years after that, when you get to Mandel House, certainly when you get to FDR, no, now we're going to actually run you as a corporation, right? We're not going to theoretically run everything with our Congresses and our dolls and our national assemblies like chambers of commerce, and pretty much no one's going to notice. No. Actually, now John Coleman, now David Rodriguez, now Susie Q. No, you're going to be run like a corporation. And I would like to ask David, unless he wants to add anything else to this, maybe the idea of the name, the idea of the control of the name to this system. If you could speak to that and add anything else you would like, sir.
Yeah, I hired some guy and he's helping me. It's been a few years, so it's been up and down over probably the last 4 years and dealing with court cases. And anyways, I hired some guy and we spoke and he reminded me of it's called the future labor interest. So this is what Well, the dollar used to be backed by gold and silver, as the Constitution allows. And then I think in 1933, with the bankruptcy, or what FDR did, now it's going to be based on the future labor interest. And that's where the birth certificate comes in. So it's no longer based on silver and gold, but actually based on you, how much you're going to earn in the future. And then they can make bonds based on that value. So I think that was the big one. That's just like, man, you know, you hear about these things as being like conspiracies. And then once some lawful people you paid money to and they sent it to you and you're like, wow, and you go read it, you're like, wow, this is really what it is. You know, government doesn't have anything. And we spoke about Lysander Spooner in previous shows. It's just a gang. And we were tricked. I was tricked in the schools. My parents were tricked. My grandparents were tricked. The reality is that on my rights come the creator or nature or God, whatever one believes. And we are here to expand and grow and be free. But this corporation called the city, county, state, and federal governments come in. They have nothing, so they have to mind control us, trick us, use fraud in the inducement of contracts. And we think we need licenses to collect the rainwater off of our roofs. And we're just like, please give us an ounce of freedom. So we basically, with the property tax situation, I think in Florida, they're talking about repealing property taxes. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize, hey, this is not freedom. You know, if you own a house, you pay it off, but you still got to pay the county 1% of your value. It's actually a feudal system. So they've used the law to take us back to feudalism, where you have basically the super rich and the poor or lower class people. And this is what's unfolding. So it is. I used to be kind of skeptical of these things, and now I just realize it's all fraud, and it's up to us to build the new world. So contracts and knowledge and truth are the way forward, I feel. And, you know, we're here to learn about that.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for that. And you know, David mentions, oh, this guy that I hired, that's called a research assistant. If people are inclined to poo-poo on that, it's called a research assistant. He uses more casual language, and it's very common in academia to do that. Nowadays, everyone and their uncle, rightly or wrongly, is another discussion, is running off to these so-called AIs, which are hardly as independent as people might imagine they are. Well, a research assistant's that, except they know what the hell they're doing, and they're actually humans, and hopefully they have a tinge and a twinge of morality to them.
Yeah.
And so this is very common. I just wanted to point that out because a lot of people actually don't realize how research is done. It takes a lot of time. It actually takes more time than one individual has on hand. And so we need help. And there we go. But yeah, we are under a corporate domination, and we'll tease out how this comes to pass. David here mentions, you know, this actually very very classical, appeal to heaven, to use the New England language, from the time of our revolution. But this, you know, God and here I am, and how the hell did these attorneys and merchants get in between those 2 points? We're going to tease that out. But just for people for whom this is very new, checking accounts. Okay. It wasn't that long ago, we'll say the time of your grandpappies, that only the drugstore, only the factory had checking accounts, what you call bank accounts, the audience. That's one indication. The fact that, you know, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker has checking accounts. The fact that this device that was once only used by obvious businesses has now been popularized. That's one feather in the cap of where we're going. There are many more feathers in the cap. Another, in our own living lifetimes. And also a testimony to David's interest and mine in the brainwashing, which is modern schooling. I'm going to go so far as to say public, private, and homeschooling. I'm going to include homeschooling and unschooling in this critique. Produces the exact same slave, maybe with shades of difference. This is me talking, not David. If we're really into alternative education, we have to start asking ourselves, are the people that are coming out of alternative education that different than the mainstream? But in our own spitting distance lifetimes, the credit score the credit score, which I am told every time I turn on the television and the radio and the internet that I'm supposed to care about. I remember when this thing didn't exist. And now every Joe Blow now cares about some number that a slave that they don't even know about gave them. But in reality, that number is not that different than Franklin Roosevelt's birth certificate number and the CUSP and all of these things we can get into. But in our own lifetime, if this seems occulted, how our own names, we're going to now focus on the birth certificate for a moment. If this seems difficult to grasp, and it is, and it's very unsettling, just use that one or two cues: the credit score and the popularization of the bank account in our own living lifetimes, as proof that this system, whatever this system is, sees us as corporations.
That's right. Yeah, it's quite mind-blowing. It is. I'm from a small town, and I just trusted all the adults around me. And then you find out we've been scammed and schemed. And I mentioned the future labor interests. The actual title of the act is the Shepherd Towner Maternity and Infancy Protection Act of 1921. So it's there. And you even have, well, in my case, I was fighting a court case for shopping without a mask and doing these things in California and Santa Cruz. And I was being my own attorney, in fact. And I learned about these things, how not only is the birth certificate monetized and put out as a bond to lien against or to borrow against, but also the court cases themselves. So I hired another guy. This is a friend of a friend. Again, as you get into the legal conversation, you meet other people that are honest and moral, and they know it's all a fraud. So they're trying to find remedy for this parasitical system. Anyways, we paid him a few bucks. He went, did research, and he found my court case with my name, my all caps name, my court case number on the stock market. Not only that, he made an affidavit, which is a statement of truth, signed, notarized, which means he's willing to testify in court. So he sent that affidavit to me, and during the court procedure, the judge is proceeding, and I said, Your Honor, with all due respect, we have to stop because I found out there's fraud going on in this case, and I have a signed affidavit that says my court case is on the stock market, and I want to know who authorized this. I want to know how much money they're making, right? So I started digging down, and I'm like, okay, we got him now. The judge goes, Mr. Rodriguez, we're not here to discuss that. And just steamrolls me and just keeps, all right. And he just keeps going on with the case that I was working on. And I'm like, wow. So part of it is finding the truth. And the other part is, how do you enforce it? How do you make it applicable? And I think this is kind of a higher level, but what we're doing with this kind of conversation and media, I think this is probably one of the key solutions to discuss it with honor, to expose it, and to reveal the bad actors, because people do bad things in the dark, but when you shine light upon their bad actions, they scatter like cockroaches. So I think this conversation is one of the solutions for the system. They've deceived us, and even like a speeding ticket. The speeding ticket is a financial instrument. When a cop pulls you over and says, hey, you're driving 25 in a 20 zone or whatever it is, he says, sign this document. It's not an admission of guilt. It's a promise to appear. You can ask them, what will you do to me if I don't sign this ticket? And I've had multiple cops tell me, we're going to take you to jail. I said, okay, so I sign it, and then under it, I put under duress, because in the real contracting world, you need consenting parties. You have to have full disclosure of the terms, and ideally you have a witness or two. That makes a valid contract. And if you're not consenting, or someone's got a gun to your head or threatening you in other means, that a contract is null and void. but that's what the whole legal system is based upon. That's what this traffic system is based upon. In common law, and you guys can read the Constitution, the federal Constitution, not that it has any authority according to Spooner, but it is to be the foundation of the country, at least the Declaration of Independence. But it says that you must have a consenting party to agree to a contract. And common law, in order to have a real case, you must have a victim. So speeding tickets, these are lead violations. You can ask, where is the injured party? Because it says you have a right to face your accuser. So I say, where is my accuser? And they say, the state is the accuser. I say, what's that? It's a piece of paper. The state is not a living being, a man or a woman. And so this is the significance of understanding that your name, all caps, birth certificate, social security number, you're like, what's going on? There's a whole giant financial world based on these things. And you probably know, John, but social security, Medicare, these are all unfunded liabilities. And I think it's in the hundreds of trillions now, where people are going to be expecting the government to take care of them. And there is no money. The government just has promissory notes, fiat currency. There's nothing there, but that was the contract that they signed. So to know that there's nobody coming to save you or me, I think is one of also the big takeaways. Also, it's like, okay, what are we going to do? All governments eventually collapse. All fiat currencies eventually collapse. And this is where we got to start inspiring ourselves and finding remedy to this type of world, because even if you have all the fiat currency in your house, you can't eat it. You need actual food and water and energy to survive and thrive. And I think that's what's going on. We're facing probably a reset of the system. They've even called it the Great Reset. The state is called Build Back Better. Like, I wonder what they're trying to build back better. They want you to build up the state again. When everything collapses, they want you to build it all up again. And I appreciate what you said about the homeschool, private school, alternative schools. They're also creating status. They're creating people who don't know about right and wrong, and they think some other person is responsible for their life, when that's not the case at all. It's you're responsible for you, I'm responsible for me, and together we can have a voluntary relationship. Together we can get along with consensual, honorable interactions instead of what's going on now, which is force, coercion, all based on this corporate fiction entity, the all caps named STRAWMANed.
Okay, and again, if there's ever a delay, it's just because I'm ticking off the unmute here for everyone. David, to put you on the spot here, you had mentioned at the beginning of your response just now, your reply, some ACT, and it was something from 1921. I'm going to put you on the spot here. If you have it spelled out, do you have that ACT spelled out? Something with maternity, etc.
Yeah, it's Shepherd, SHEPPARD Towner. Shepherd Towner Maternity and Infancy Act, 1921.
Let's count those. Just for fun, let's count just for fun, let's count the letters there. So Shepherd has how many letters?
SHEPPARD. That's 8 dash
8.
TOWNER. Yep. Another 6.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
What else?
Maternity and infancy.
How many are we looking at?
Oh, maternity.
How many letters?
That's 9.
9. Okay. And infancy is?
Infancy is 7.
Okay. And ACT is 3, isn't it?
ACT is 3. Yeah, protections after infancy, if that matters.
Okay.
Protection
yes, sir.
10.
And how many?
That's
10.
10.
Okay. So we're going to add up, and we're going to see if the spaces. Let's see if we can hit 33. Let's have some fun here. Okay. Yeah. 10 plus 3 is 13, plus 7 is 20. Now we're up to 29. 35. I'm going backwards here. Plus. Okay. 35. Hold on. 13, 20, 29, 35. Okay, we overshoot it quite a bit. All right, I wanted to have some fun there, but it's interesting how often 33 comes up. And there's other uses of numerology. But in
Yeah.
any case, thank you for that and humoring me with that, David. But in
Yeah.
any case, we are dealing with a huge topic here, and I just want to scale things back because the ramifications of this are intimate to each and every one of us participating and listening to this presentation. And they are very often painful for people. So I just want to point out that the name, our very names, we're going to even sidestep the pain, the fact that our names have been stolen by a fictional entity that people are pretending to keep up, the so-called state. We'll sidestep that pain, and let's just talk about pains we all know. These marriage so-called courts, all of the stuff that comes from the paternity, the maternity, the child leave, the taxes, the stabbing to death. You work for so long. We pay way more in these liberal, capital L, liberal nations. We pay far more than medieval peasants paid in taxes, and people way back when in the 18th and 19th century were noticing this. I think Lysander Spooner was one, Hilaire Belloc was another. In the 20th century, we pay way more in these free nation states that are basically chambers of commerce than people in the whatever King Richard's or whatever King Philip or whatever king you want ever paid. That's a pain. I mean, I don't mean that in just some quotidian way. I mean, that really does hurt to pay these endless fees for things that we worked at, especially when we consider what money ought to be, which is a certain symbol of our life essence on this earth. Our homes, our how do we say, our patrimony, our businesses that we start, all of this is held in hock, held in lien, basically, by the birth certificate name. So one of the principles, this is very new for a lot of people. In the legal system, they have maxims, and the maxims actually often make a lot of sense. These are sayings, and one of the most important sayings, even to the grade school students I teach this, is the creator controls. The creator controls. So I want to wind things back. Maybe we can spend a minute here, David, talking about just the very birth process. The creator controls. If David wants to use my old car, he has to follow my rules. He has to put gas in the tank and whatever. He has to bring it home before 9 o'clock, David. You agree?
Right.
You're using my car, right? Come back by curfew, young man. Why? What is the principle there? What is the principle of when you go to a park, leave it cleaner, like the Boy Scouts, leave it cleaner than when you found it? The principle is you're using someone else's property to put the gas in the tank, using your old man's car or whatever, whoever's car, or you're using their park. Make it nicer than you found it. Keep it in good repair. Okay. The creator controls. What we have is a system. And I'm going to kick it over to David now. What we have now is a system where we're innocent, simple, maybe thoughtless, maybe, heedless, whatever. Mommy and daddy are busy with, a life event, the birth of a child. They don't know their ass from their elbow. They just want to raise the child. They're full of, all this mommy and daddy time of life. That's great, beautiful. And this system, this parasitic system, especially if you go to these hospitals, which are all prisoner of war camps, if you want to go back to where these things came from in the Civil War, in the Lieber Code, this system inserts itself like a parasite, unbeknownst. You don't know when it ticks on you. You don't know till it's too late. A day later when you're sitting on the thing the whole time. This parasitic legal system comes in. Mommy and daddy just want to raise a baby that's healthy and whatever. And the creator controls. And this system comes in and it gets mommy and daddy in the mountain of paperwork to, first of all, when they step foot inside that prisoner of war camp, to agree to sign anything that's presented to them. When you and I step foot in their emergency rooms, in their hospitals, they make you sign waivers, and nobody pays attention to what they sign. I don't. Any more than these computer things. And one of the things mommy and daddy sign is that they agree to sign everything else that they're given, including the birth certificate. and they don't know their ass from their elbow once again. And so, a few days later, after all the birth trauma that attends modern birthing to bug out the kid for the rest of his life, which is another discussion, some nurse will show up with a clipboard. Oh, Mr. Rodriguez, congratulate you. You're a daddy. You're a daddy. Congratulations, Mr. Rodriguez. And here's the sign off for this thing and sign off for this and that and the other. Oh, by the way, 3 or 4 pages, and here's the birth certificate application. You want to sign that, don't you, sir? And I would like you now, if you could speak to, if you have any interest in pursuing this, the whole birth certificate process with the name and the number. You alluded to it before. There's a lot here, and that's why I want to kind of focus in on this, because this birth certificate process is well, to be honest, it's the inception event of the legal person. It is the most important part. So is there anything you want to add to this particular moment, David?
Well, back in the day, you would record birth in the family Bible, and then corporation got in there and they said, hey, this could be chattel. This could be future labor interest. And I sent you a PDF on the little plus thing. It's a document we can pull up. I don't know if you can pull it up there. But this is the consenting way that people contract with the state. So this document here is from the law professional who has helped me, and because it is so overwhelming that I want you to see that this is the notice of the existence of the birth certificate trust, and we won't have time to go over everything, but do look at the legacy account here. It says C31 CFR 363. You can go and look that up there. It says the birth certificate emanates from the requirements of Maternity Act of 1920, the Promotion and Welfare and the Maternity Hygiene, Maternity Infancy Act, Shepherd-Towner Act, which we just mentioned, for federal funding of child care. And it goes through that. We'll go to the second slide. Yeah, and then talks about the World Banker, Karen Hoods, who she's given lectures on this and gone through that. The 1933 Federal Emergency Relief Act right there. Talking about that. These are all primary sources that you can go and take a look at yourself and verify these things. National emergency. That's what that was about in 1933. Yeah, it's just unbelievable, this stuff. So here's what does it mean? Right, sir. The woman born in the United States created an estate upon their birth. An agency agreement was created between the woman and the British Crown, the Catholic Vatican, under Unum Sanctum, covered separate and apart the Holy See, and the BAR, the British Accreditation and Registry. So you can look there. It's blocking it right there. Yeah, the woman's name in all capital letters is a representation, a representative of the estate trust. Lowercase represents the woman. The definition, capitis diminutio maxima, the greatest capitis diminutio maxima involved in the loss of liberty, citizenship, and family. Then it has the beneficiary. You are the donor, the grantor, the beneficiary of this trust. So this document is a process. It mentions Social Security as well. The FRAN number, Federal Reserve account number, is on the back of your Social Security number. And that's probably enough for this conversation, just to let people know that this thing exists. I'll just clip through it so you can see the slides and check it out at your own convenience. But it is such a deep thing that is incredible. So Social Security is a different number as opposed to the birth certificate. So birth certificate is the name. Then you use that name to register with the Social Security Administration. And now you have the number. And that is the number that Colonel Edward Mandell House was talking about. And then you said something interesting about the credit score, because I was still learning about the credit score, but you must have remembered that. Well, now in China, they have a social credit score. So if you do a bad thing, let's say you walk across the street with without waiting for the sign to tell you that, then you're going to be in trouble. And this is the slow boiling of the frog for a totalitarian technocracy. And that's what's going on right now. They're using this as a tracking device. I think that's probably the high level. And there are people, and this gentleman I'm working with, there's other people out there. Sacred Honor Fellowship is one of them, that teach people how to tap into this trust and offset debts. There's other people out there as well. I haven't had any success with that yet, so I'm not able to promote that, but they have. And so they're verifying it, and you can check them out. But one of my friends-in-law, Jackie Fig, a great woman, rest in paradise friend, she said, anytime someone talks to you about law or try this method, you want to ask them, have you tried it? Or do you know anyone who's tried it? Because there are a bunch of mythologies out there, and you don't want to go get caught up in some paper game that somebody told you, and like the telephone game, it gets watered down, and all of a sudden you're mixed up in something. You say, I don't know, she told me. Well, this is your life, and ultimately you are the king of your life. You're the queen, you're the president, you're the CEO of this body. As I mentioned in a previous call, this is the body temple nation. That's the term that I'm creating, and hopefully finish some type of presentation about this and book. But this is my body, this is my temple, this is my nation, and we're in charge. So we can't abdicate our responsibility anymore. This is what this is about. We forgot. We said somebody else is going to take care of it. Somebody else is responsible for my life. And that's not going to work in the new world that's being created right now. The empire is going down. These banks are going down. These technocratic centralized systems are going down. They're going to try, and they're going to, build up from the ashes and get maybe a third or maybe a quarter of the population. But I think the majority of people smell this rotten thing that's happening in society. And it's not just in the last few years. It's been going on for many generations. And now they've lost control of media. They've lost control of the narrative. So now they're just going to try to throw all these things in there and try to confuse you. But contracts are very important. And again, if you sign something unknowingly, unwittingly, without the full disclosure of the terms, that contract is null and void. And as more people begin to stand up and call out the fraud, the system goes down. And we're at that point now where people are starting to rise up and put affidavits together. Affidavits are very powerful because an unrebutted affidavit is law or victory. So when you send affidavits to people, this is called the administrative process. You send one, you send two, you send three, and if they don't reply, then they're in default, and your affirmation or affidavit of the truth stands as law. So at least in common law terms, this is the way it works. And the challenge is that the government law enforcement officers are a lot of times good guys, a lot of times not, but they're doing their job, and they'll just enforce it. And they'll tell you, I'm sorry, I don't make the law, I just enforce it, which is actually worse, because if you have a gun and a badge, you have a higher standard of I think that is a very serious cop-out and something that won't last in the new world. You got to be honorable and moral in the new world.
David, you cut out there. So I'd like you to say to pick up immediately after a gun and a badge in 3 and 2.
If you have a gun and a badge, you have a higher standard of honor, morality, and integrity. So this excuse that I'm just doing my job is not going to work in the new world. That's from like the 1950s or the 1970s, with the civil rights stuff. We now know that we're all brothers and sisters on the earth. We're all equal. No one's allowed to use coercion against each other. And it's up to us to stand up for ourselves. That's where this moral courage comes in. And that's why I do what I do, is to help people understand morality, because as MLK said, I think it was St. Thomas Aquinas, perhaps, he says, you have a moral obligation to disobey unjust laws. So just because it's a law, just because it's a statute, You don't have to follow it. You are the supreme authority over your life and your body. And Gandhi calls it the law of conscience. So the law of conscience is higher than any type of government code, statute, or ordinance that they can implement. So think for yourself and look for the righteousness in it. And if there's not righteousness, then you have an obligation to disobey. And I think that's what's going to happen here very shortly, because this fraud's coming out and they're not going to stop it. There's too many people who know about this and are exposing it. And then we're learning about contracts themselves. You know, even in my school, when students enroll in my school, they sign up, the parents sign up, and in the contract itself, they exclude the city, county, state, and federal governments. So it's in the contract. And then according to Hale versus Hinkle, very famous Supreme Court case, each man and woman has an unlimited ability to contract. So the city, county, state, and federal governments, they cannot limit our ability to contract. Me and John can make a contract and exclude the entire world. And whatever our terms are in that agreement, that's between me and John. So this is coming, I believe, for local areas, intentional neighborhoods, private societies, clubs, these types of entities where it's based on consent, respect, and no coercion and no compulsion.
Great. Thank you for that, David. What a primer that we've had here with you today, looking at the legal system. It is an enormous lie. It is an enormous thing to fight. And you mentioned at least twice in this time together the word honor. The word honor. And we hear that. We watch the Judge Judy show and this judge and Judge Mathis, and we hear, oh, yes, your honor. Or we watch My Cousin Vinny, oh, you're in dishonor, and so forth. You've been honorably discharged from our slave army. I've been dishonorably discharged from. Okay, well, honor and dishonor are actually quite simple. And as David's laid out for the audience, literally to be an honor is simply to go on, not, I don't even mean this in a violent sense, but to take agency. I won't even say go on the offensive, which is one way to phrase it, but literally to care enough to have a certain amount of self-respect. You are in honor. If you ignore something, or you kick it around the street, or you tear up the ticket, right, you're in dishonor, right? A man has approached you, the state has, you have some issue with the state and you ignore it, you're in dishonor. But if you actually, take some self-respect, and there is, as we learn this system, this wicked system deeper, there is a very curious type of respect. Once you understand what the system is and what the real true system is, those two worlds, if you want to use St. Augustine's language, the city of God and the city of man, there is a certain respect that they have for each other in terms of people taking responsibility for themselves. And that, now we bring it full circle. This is our, third or fourth conversation. We're back to education. We're back to how we learn how to perceive ourselves and ourselves in society. Because everything David says, and whatever little bit I can contribute to this consciousness, is worthless if you and I don't act like kings and don't realize our rights, but also our responsibilities under this and under this reality. And that's largely how this system, going back to Mandel House and going back a long way before him, has been able to be so successful. We've forgotten who we are, yes, but we've also forgotten our obligations as kings on this earth. And that means to fight, as good old Malcolm X said, with every means possible against tyranny, using our minds, our hands, also in the right circumstances. There are other ways one can fight tyranny. But for right now, it's enough to get consciousness together and to rear up a generation. That's more powerful, in fact, than physical force. And that's the rub, as Shakespeare says, right? And that's the rub, is to realize who we are and the power that we have. This system automatically defaults to physical force. It automatically defaults to costumes. It automatically default. I mean, it's like a cartoon. It is a cartoon in many respects, and we're dealing with a fictional, literally a cartoon world. It literally defaults to persons and to razzle dazzle because it's a lie. And God is simple. Find me a religion that doesn't tell you that God or the gods or the unit, whatever you want, is simple. God is simple. Lies are complicated, right? This is appeal to heaven. This is right. You know that, and I know that. When we lie, you have to think about all these things. You have to pad your behind and cover all your base. That's the legal system because it's all fiction. It's an entire monolith. It's an entire mountain. It is unbelievable. I mean, you really, some of you know what we're talking about, and some of you, this will lead you on a path of discovery, and most of you won't even care, and you'll be clicking something in a few minutes, and you'll forget about this. But for those of you who pursue this knowledge, and you really realize the consequences, first of all, you will think you're going mad. This system of lies and how intricate and all pervasive it appears to be, you will think you're going mad. And then you will realize your power. And then, and this is where people really flake out, and this is my final point, and we can set up for our next show, please God, then we realize the obligations we have under this reality of who we are. And part of that is to fight lies and to fight bullies. And that's what this legal system is. Everyone who's pulled over, millions of men rotting in these dungeons right now. How many billions of dollars are stolen by these cartoon characters? We can go on and on. There's an obligation to know things and to resist the tyranny. And then finally to education. I give David the last word. Finally, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. All those clowns in costumes, all these attorneys, these barristers, these creeps in their town halls and their state capitals and all their make-believe, they were once little boys and girls too. And it might be interesting to not teach them into fiction and to not have a system that conditions them for 15 and 20 years into this. So I'd like to pursue this in the future because the ramifications of this legal system in education are immense. But David, anyway, I'll put a sock in it. You had the final word, sir.
No, that was great. Thank you for that, and thanks for the conversation. I think the challenge is it's been going on for generations, and we've been under mind control. And I think I've mentioned I'm working with a movie director. We're trying to fund this movie. He's already made 40 commercial movies, but it's for like kind of traditional Hollywood, and we're looking for investors because politics is downstream of culture. So we got to change the culture and have a more honorable culture. So, for example, where are the heroes in your community? Where are the heroes for the men, for the women, for the boys and the girls? Who are these heroes? So, what is it? Superman, Wonder Woman? Where are they? And that's why I started. Wow, it actually is the moral leaders like Gandhi or MLK or Tolstoy, and these are of course not perfect people, but they give us an image. And even J.R. Tolkien, right, with Lord of the Rings, he was voluntarist. He realized the ring of power has to be thrown in. That's right, Tolstoy. That's right. Yeah, one of the compassionate, prolific writers of all time. And this is why we don't hear about him anymore, because he was actually talking about things which were against Darwin and Galton and those guys who were like, there's too many people on the earth, we're the superior ones, and these people are going, evolving down. And I believe in the sanctity of life, no matter what gender, no matter what your skin color is. I think there's one race, it's called the human race. And after I've seen enough of these police brutality videos, I'm like, what is the solution here, man? And it's definitely not trying to change this coercive monopoly organization, but it's actually building solutions, alternatives to make them obsolete. And that's what Dale Brown does in Detroit, Michigan with the Threat Management Center. It's a voluntary police force. He's never killed any of his clients. None of his clients have ever been killed, unlike your local police department. And even mine in my hometown, there's not even 5,000 people in my hometown. and they killed a homeless guy last year or something, we just ridiculousness. So there is no limit to a coercive monopoly organization. So when the bully comes to take your lunch money, or the bully comes to throw you in the trash can, you can take it for a while, but eventually you have to stand up. Now, I don't promote violence because I've not seen that be successful with Waco, Ruby Ridge, these types of places. However, Gandhi laid it out and he said the truth and nonviolence and love are more powerful than violence. So he demonstrated that. He kicked out the great, the British Army using nonviolence. Now, it took years. Many people got killed. Many people suffered in jail, as you said. There is suffering involved. However, they won. And so now I think humanity is getting to that point where, the good men are going to rise. Good women are rising. Good men are rising. And we're raising boys and girls to be these heroes. And instead of making cash the number one thing, I think morality, righteousness, honor, protecting the women and children, protecting men, protecting the vulnerable. That's where this is going, and it starts with inside. So this is why I'm no longer trying to change the outside. I'm trying to change the inside. So that's what he says. He says, you'll be the change you want to see in the world. And Marcus Aurelius says, don't talk about what a good man is, be one. And that's what this is about. So this is where we got to take a look in the mirror and say, man, what are we doing? What am I doing? How am I contributing to a more peaceful, freer world? And how can I help other people contribute to a more peaceful, freer world? Because it's not going to come from the top down. It's going to come down from the grassroots, which is you, me, this audience, our audiences, people together. We're not the only ones. There's a lot of people waking up. Do not be conquered by the art of war. By Sun Tzu, he says the ultimate art of war is to conquer the enemy without fighting. Do not lay down. And this is why you never confess to a crime because you're intimidated. This is if you're in the interrogation room. No, stay silent, even if you didn't do it. And the lawyer, he says, if you're guilty, you need a lawyer. If you're innocent, you really need a lawyer. Okay, this is a prosecutorial system. They want to throw you away, ruin your life. And I've been in jail a couple times for my civil disobedience. It's not the place to be. There's a lot of innocent people in there, and you want to stay out, but you also got to stand up for the children, the next generation. And the Native Americans had it right 7 generations down the road. What are we doing today for 7 generations? Yes, if you see it like a farmer, it's like you plant a seed and then you have to wait 5 years for the fruit to come, 10 years. But the farmer is the wise one because plant some fruit trees, plant some vineyards in reality and metaphorically, whether it's videos, art, movies, comedy, there's ways to get these messages out there, but this is what it is. We're shifting the culture, and I think education is one of the best ways to do that. There's another great quote. It says, education is not neutral. It's either for enslavement or for liberation. So I like to believe it's for liberation and empowerment, and self-knowledge is the basis of all knowledge. So we got to learn about ourselves, and then by learning about ourselves, we're learning about each other, how to have compassion with each other and take up leadership and take up courage. And I think nonviolence is probably the path because, yeah, people have guns, but, killing somebody, that's not a solution. These are all, brothers and sisters. These are all children. Everybody's got parents. So, we don't want to have violence on people, but we also don't want to cooperate with evil and cooperate with immorality. And we can now live stream it. Worst case scenario, just live stream it. Live stream the bad actors in your area and expose what's going on. And then ideally build a community. Have 5 or 7 people that you can speak truth with and start to, organize independent food, water, energy, commercial activities, trade, protection, healthcare, education, these kind of things. And I do think humanity will come out of it. And the birth certificate is one example. Just like, wow, I never thought. Well, now we learn about it. Now we got to use it for good, make contracts. And I guess I'll finish with that part, is I think contracts is the future also, where we make agreements with each other on the terms of our relationship. We provide a mediator or an arbiter if there's some conflict, because we are humans and there might be some conflict. We're not perfect. So rather than let the state come in there, even if you're getting married, consider not even having a marriage contract with the state or license. Do a private contract and provide some type of other types of remedies in there, but exclude these organizations if possible, because they're based on coercion, and that's not righteous and it's not moral. So yes, this has been a great conversation, John. Appreciate your knowledge, and this interaction that we've had is very, very enlivening for us, and hopefully the audience as well.
Yes, absolutely, David. Thank you very much for your insights here. And I should hope to pursue some of these topics, these legal topics and these educational topics, because they're very much related to the type of society, to an earlier point I made, the type of society that we wish to forge. And hopefully that's an agentic society and a society of kings, but that comes with its own obligations. And in fact, part of the reason I believe that we're in the state that we're at is because of our addiction to ease and to going along to get along. And it takes two to tango. There is a wicked state system, and there's bad actors and so forth. And then there's a lot of John Colemans who are super lazy. And, it's a lot easier to be a slave than to be a king, to be honest. I mean, that's why if you look at a lot of the old poetry, the slave is not someone who's sentimentally pitied. That's a very American thing since the 19th century with Uncle Tom's Cabin and so forth, to pity, the poor slave. If you actually look at most of the literature that deals with slavery, in a critical way, it's actually spitting on the slave, because the slave, what's disgusting about the slave, like John Coleman, the slave who's addicted to ease, is that we love our slavery. We lust for our slavery, and to break those chains takes work, and it would be better off just to hang out in Mass's house and play Mass's video games and so forth. I think Malcolm X had a beat on this reality, like those old poets did. Anyway, I'm going on long enough, and you've been very generous with your time and very humorous with the tech problems that we've had here. David, we can get all of your stuff, I understand, on the link tree. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, Linktree/David James Rodriguez. I do early high school graduations and homeschool consulting. If you're thinking about pulling your kids out this year, contact me, or we can get them a diploma. And yeah, there's other ways. I have some courses and stuff on that link as well. And yeah, let's chat again, John. This is a very good conversation. I'm grateful to have the dialogue with you and put it on the record.
Great. To the audience, thank you for your attention here. Do check out David's stuff and do patronize his work in various ways. And if you have a few dollars, patronize that film project. You can get in touch with him through that link tree. And then you can shimmy over to Apocatastasis' site. And especially, David, indeed, thank you for your insights. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.